I'm Eli Karp, founder of Hello Living, a community-based real estate development company in Brooklyn. A simple signature philosophy that has fueled and defined my success as an entrepreneur for nearly 2 decades, and with more than $500 million in development projects. Never settle for the status quo. The status quo is where innovation retreats to die. People often seek my guidance and counsel regarding potential real estate ventures and opportunities. There is no easy money in real estate. It takes the unwavering strength and perseverance of hardened steel and concrete to forge success in this business. I only design units that I could actually see myself living in. I'm Eli Karp, and this is my blueprint. So, you've done all your research, you've spent countless hours learning the ins and outs of zoning, you found the perfect lot in your ideal neighborhood. It even has your desired zoning designation. You've worked tirelessly with your architect, you develop perfect building schematics, your design strikes the perfect balance of creativity, profitability, and feasibility. Not to mention, it's in full compliance with all zoning district requirements. Your closing date is set. You're ready to move full speed ahead. Well, not so fast. Despite all the preparation, there are still many factors and restrictions that can drastically affect your ability to build according to even the best laid plans. Thankfully, running a quick title report prior to purchasing your property will alert you to all the following pitfalls and roadblocks. Covenants are legally binding clauses written into the deed of the property by the seller that create obligations or restrictions as to how that land can be used by any owner, present or future. Covenants are tied to the use of the property forever. They are not tied to a specific owner, but rather run with the land and remain with the deed even upon transfer of ownership. Any owner can record a covenant, and any person who purchases that lot now and forever must honor those restrictions and parameters. Some covenants can be restrictive, while others could be affirmative. An affirmative covenant creates an obligation that all future owners must fulfill. For instance, the requirement that all units built on that land must meet minimum square footage would be an affirmative covenant. A restrictive covenant, also known as a deed restriction, limits what can be built on the property or how the land can be used. An example for a restrictive covenant is when the land is only to be used for the purpose of a school or hospital. Another common example is when homeowners associations decide how buildings should look. Often, deed restrictions like this are recorded in cooperation with neighboring property owners as a means of maintaining or increasing the property value in the future. For example, a property may have a recorded deed restriction that prohibits the building of any structure higher than 20 feet to ensure that nobody's views are ever obstructed. The deed of adjacent lots may also contain similar restrictions. This is a result of adjacent landowners coming together in an attempt to maintain the property value of each neighboring lot for years to come. If a deed restriction prohibits you from building higher than 20 feet, you cannot build higher than 20 feet, even if the zoning allows it. Even 100 years later, after many owners changed hands, nothing removes the covenant that was once recorded on the site. If you attempt to violate that deed restrictions, your neighbors are entitled to bring a lawsuit against you as means to enforce your compliance, and they would win. Deed restrictions can exert surprising amount of control over your building plans. But then there are those deed restrictions that are historically dated, which can be amusing. One of our projects had a deed restrictions that forbids raising goats on the property. Thankfully, that was one deed restrictions we were easily able to honor. Easements happen when someone other than the property owner has legal right to use the property for a specific and defined purpose. For example, easements are granted to utility companies to run overhead and underground power or cable lines. These easements reduce costs for the utility company and thereby save money for the community. While utility easements often don't play a major role in overall building design, other easements have a much larger effect on your building plans. For example, shared driveways or easements that ensure that natural light and air reaches the street. Occasionally, you may find that a neighbor's walls or chimney are encroaching beyond your property line, preventing you from building on the full width of your property lot. And no, you are not entitled to damage or remove their property. You cannot break their wall nor destroy their chimney, even when they are overhanging on your lot. Your property dimensions and encroachments are determined by the property survey. Even if records show the dimensions of the lot as 100 by 100, that does not actually mean you have full access to those dimensions. Never close on a property without a proper survey. Encumbrances occur when someone makes a claim against a property, which in turn impacts the property's free use and transferability. Property liens and tax liens are two common encumbrances that you may run into when purchasing a property. Property liens and tax liens are two common encumbrances that you may run into when purchasing a lot. Property liens are legal claims to the property which states specific terms that the owner must fulfill. For example, paying unpaid contractors who worked on the building or paying off a debt. If the owner does not fulfill set terms, the lien remains attached to the property, which prevents the owner from selling, refinancing, or transferring the property without satisfying that lien. Tax liens on a property operate in a similar manner, where the government makes a claim against properties that belong to non-compliant taxpayers. This intends to force them to pay their owed taxes in order to satisfy the lien. A reputable title company will make sure that all liens have been cleared from your property prior to closing.